Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Zane Witherspoon, the CEO of Superset. Welcome. So first off, Zane, tell us a little bit about Superset and then tell us about why this startup has to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Superset is building the next generation of privacy compliance tools for businesses. The laws around what companies can and can't do with our data are exploding. Everybody talks about GDPR like it's this hard thing to follow. But the fact of the matter is, while we don't have a federal privacy law in the US, we've got 25 GDPRs and counting here. So it's an absolute mess, impossible to keep up with. So we need better tools for businesses to be able to follow the laws when they want to do the right thing.
So each privacy rule has is done by state, or what's the situation?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different laws depending on the state that you're in, the states that you operate in, different sectoral laws, like different laws for ad tech. People know about HIPAA if you're in the medical space, but we've just got so many different rules you need to keep track of. There's executive orders, there's a lot of things to follow.
And this is your third startup. So you mentioned that this is the one that you want to win simply because you had so many close calls, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I've been working with consumer data and really passionate about giving people access to the value that it seems like is being hoarded by these companies at the top that have been collecting our data in this deal that we didn't really realize we were signing up to for so many years. With free products. And it feels like every step in my journey, I'm getting a little bit closer to where people actually are. My first startup was a blockchain protocol to help people own their data. It was very future tech, and we raised really well in the hype cycle of 2017. Raised about 13 million, grew up to about 25 people, and then crashed in the crypto crash of 2018. And then after spending a little time licking my wounds, I went back into the ring with a data pipeline company to help pull our data out of the hands of Facebook, Google, and Amazon. That was only possible because of new laws like GDPR and CCPA that hadn't existed prior. And that one did pretty good. We got acquired by our biggest customer. We didn't get as big as the first one. It was kind of a hard high water mark to hit again. But this time it's a little bit more like, hey, here are some laws and we're going to follow them. All right. It's very practical what businesses really need right now, and it helps people too.
Okay. So this idea about personal data and privacy, this is like, I don't think Americans think about it a lot, but what drew you to this idea?
Yeah, honestly, it started with growing up with a single mother and being really passionate about music. But when it came time to choose a career path, it really felt like tech was the only viable option for me. Like I couldn't, not just for me, but for my mom. Like I am still her retirement plan. I had to do the thing that was more profitable in the long run for the stability of my family. And so I thought that, with all these middlemen out there that are getting a cut, and now it's all about Spotify, but before that, Apple Music took a third of your transactions on iTunes. If you're a photographer, Shutterstock takes about 98% of every transaction. And so I originally came at it from sort of a content perspective. It's like, people are creating all the time. And if there was a way for people to make more, keep more of what they create, I thought that was a really powerful mission. It could give people the freedom to work on what they want to work on. And as we were building out tech to actually make that happen, we sort of realized that, wait a minute, everybody's creating value all the time, but it exists often in rows and columns, not just in these big content pieces. So it really was kind of like a goal of helping people achieve financial stability.
But helping like musicians achieve financial, or creators achieve financial stability, or what was the goal there?
Yeah, that was the initial inception. And then we kind of realized like most of the valuable data in the world isn't actually in like the blobs and the content, but it's hidden in pretty boring rows and tables that unfortunately right now is pretty much used antagonistically to get us to buy things and vote certain ways. But I still really believe that there's a lot of power and a lot of value in that data if we can access it effectively.
So I think the mission sounds positive, obviously, right? But how do you square the idea that you're going to protect the data from Facebook when Facebook is the biggest animal in the room, that they're gonna hoover up the data anyway? How are you protecting the average person in that way?
Yeah, there's a couple different angles to that. One is that I definitely consider myself a privacy advocate. I'm down in DC lobbying for a federal privacy bill every year, and I'm active member at the California Privacy Protection Agency, public hearings. Pretty sure they're tired of hearing from me at this point. But there's the protections from the big tech companies. And then there's the sort of what if future, where the question becomes, what if we all got to share in the value of that data?
Mm-hmm.
Even being a privacy advocate for myself, I still use Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. For me, it's not about the right to be hidden from these services, because I, in many times, think that it's a pretty fair trade for my data, but we should be getting some sort of share of that value as well. At the very least, we should know what they know about us, right? If they're tracking us every time we open these apps, they see exactly how much screen time and what our interests are. If there's the ability, and especially in the world of AI, to build a more complete profile about ourselves, I've always been interested in this idea of the quantified self. And we're seeing it happen more and more with the smart rings that are coming out, people sleep tracking, people productivity tracking, and the idea that you can build sort of a digital twin of yourself. And so much of that digital twin exists inside of Meta's servers and Google's servers. So it's a little bit more about the portability of the value of that data to me than the deletion of it. But in terms of your question about actually protecting us from Facebook, Google, Amazon, there's laws that are going after them specifically. Mm-hmm. The Digital Markets Act in Europe specifically calls out a few, I think it's 5 tech companies that say you specifically need to have special regulations because of the amount of data you guys have.
What happened at Fathom? So you, so that was a couple of years. You got acquired. What was the thinking behind the acquisition?
The thinking behind the acquisition was, we had built out these really cool data pipelines to pull data out of the hands of Facebook and Google and Amazon and move it into any other application, kind of like Plaid does with your banking data. And there was one customer that was just way cooler than the rest, honestly. It was a hedge fund that had a consumer-facing app. Hedge funds are constantly buying people's data from usually credit card companies. Mm-hmm. It's pretty table stakes. If you're any sort of quantitative investor, you're buying this data from Visa, MasterCard, big banks, and you're factoring that into your investments. They had this thesis that we could go direct to consumers, get them to contribute data directly, and then they could give them a share of the hedge fund returns. So it was a really interesting use case for what happens when that data that we have isn't just locked up behind Google, behind Facebook, behind Amazon. If you could see what ads people were clicking on before that data was publicly released in the quarterly earnings, you could have a real edge in the market if we can collaborate with our data. So them being our biggest customer and us realizing that with all the data that we had access to, everybody was just pushing us towards advertising, which is pretty antithetical to the reason that we started the company. So it was a pretty generous valuation, very cool mission, team, tech alignment, and it just made sense to sort of hitch our wagon to their trailer, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Trailer to their wagon.
Trailer to their car, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you sold there, and you probably had a bit of a lockup. What encouraged you to build the new company, Superset?
Yeah, well, this is where the story really drives home that sort of keep building mentality, because shortly after the acquisition, Delphia had just raised a round. They were doing quite well, and they got caught up in a couple of scandals. There was a HR sort of case that unfortunately made it to TechCrunch. They had to do some restructuring there, letting go of a key person. And they also caught a case with the SEC. The case itself was pretty, I don't want to say bogus. They got in trouble for advertising, we use your data to train our AI, instead of saying we will use your data to train our AI once there's enough data contributors to be statistically significant. But because they're a registered investment advisor, that future tense versus current tense caught up with them. The fine wasn't that big, but the long investigation was enough to drain a lot of resources. So they had to do some restructuring. We got let go, and it's sort of like sorry, that didn't quite work out like any of us had hoped. They had some money set aside to start a project to give consumers more confidence in handing over their data. Mm-hmm. And they were like, hey, you want to take some of that money and turn it into a for-profit instead.
Oh, interesting.
So that was sort of the impetus to start creating Superset. It already came with the name and the branding. And it was, instead of just helping build trust with consumers and Delphia, we started to see what does trust look like between consumers and other types of companies as well.
Now, so the idea was that Delphia kind of went by the wayside, and then you guys became the Delphia 2.0 or something like that, right? Something like that, or is it more just like a skunkworks kind of project that came out of the original company?
Yeah, I would say that Delphia spun out into a few different projects. They also had some more like quantitative investment tooling that they've started as another for-profit entity. They spun out the hedge fund from the tech company, and they've also got a thematic investment tool called Tilt that just raised a fundraising round. So kind of went a few different directions with it.
What's your goal for this company? You mentioned that your mother's retirement plan. I think everybody who starts a startup, they're always thinking, okay, I'm going to make my $1 billion or something like that. But what seems like a good exit for you when all is said and done?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that is a little bit hard to see the forest through the trees sometimes. There's the practical side of things, which is, we're at 11 business customers right now, and we got to get that to 100 sooner rather than later. And, I think it's kind of more of an opportunity question. It sort of remains to be seen what the opportunity space is going to be here, especially as regulations roll out for AI. That's sort of the next generation of the privacy laws that are coming out. There's already been a ton of AI regulations, the EU AI Act, the Colorado AI Act, and none of them mentioned the looming threat of AI companionship. This is actually kind of like an interesting space. All the theorizing people had about what the risks with AI are going to be, employment, credit, housing. Nobody talked about syncopathy, if I'm saying that correctly.
Syncopathy. Yeah.
Syncopathy, yeah. Like a really tragic story of a man who died on his way to catch a train to go meet up with the AI companion. We heard the story recently about the teenager who got advice from ChatGPT on like how to tie a noose. There's a lot of things. I spoke with the and on a more practical, like business level too, not more practical, like there's risks with Crunchbase, for example, rolled out their AI and they had to put guardrails in place so people can't ask it something like, who's the most racist founder in Silicon Valley, So it's kind of interesting to see the difference between where the theory is for the risks and what's actually coming out. So to be honest, I really don't know what the space is going to look like in 3 years even. It's moving very quickly. Obviously, we're looking to get as big as we possibly can before an exit, see how much juice is worth the squeeze there.
How do you sell a company that is almost anathema to exactly what everybody else wants, right? So the idea that you're going to help police humans, keep them from like falling in love with AI. Even AI, for all intents and purposes, they kind of want humans to fall in love with AI. They're not going to admit it, but that's kind of like that's the Twitter mentality, right? It has to be something that you constantly visit on a constant basis. And if you can create that, I call it the 7 deadly sins kind of situation. If it's lust, greed, avarice, all that other good stuff, if you're hitting one of those things, and this would be something like lust or desire for companionship, if you're hitting that and you're hitting it in a really, really special dopamine introducing way, that's solid gold. And you coming along and saying, hey, I want to shunt off the information that you guys can use on your clients and benefit them slightly. Doesn't sound like a sound business plan for Altman or somebody.
Yeah, and I've heard a few different analogies here. Common one is digital cigarettes. Like the addictive properties of consumer technologies aren't new. They've been honing it very, very effectively for years in the world of social media. I really like Hank Green, the YouTuber content creator, does a lot of like science educational stuff. He put a more apt analogy to, it's like food. We've always been in search of information because information provides safety, but now they've got this like Doritos of information that's like hyper palatable, tons of content that we want to digest all the time. So we're always in the know. But it's not good for us, really. There's something there. Sometimes it can be helpful. So it's not exactly as bad as cigarettes, but there is sort of a public good question here in terms of the free market and what should be allowed for consumer safety. I'm in some lobbying groups. I'm in some techno-futurist groups, and there's like a bunch of different takes on what to do with the current state of AI and technology and like the potential risks that it has to the general public. Because I don't know that we're great at regulating ourselves there when we've got something just so addicting. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on the social media landscape?
Well, I mean, look, it's the social media landscape has changed so drastically over the past couple years. The idea that we're communicating constantly with like bots and stuff. I mean, that's why something like this is actually kind of valuable, where it's just two humans talking. I mean, we're definitely not as interesting as a AI girlfriend that's going to send you like, virtual nudes and then tell you to walk in front of a bus.
Right.
Sadly, but I think the real answer, the real question is how do we as content creators, and how do you as someone who's trying to protect that content, try to protect the consumers of that content by reducing their footprint, their attack surface that a lot of these companies can use to can scam them or steal from them, et cetera, et cetera. How do you break through the innate desire to prevent that from happening? And I think that's the biggest question. I mean, Elon Musk is basically sitting and he's destroying Twitter just so he can get stuff in front of us that may or may not achieve his worldview. Mm-hmm. And we're also destroying Facebook. We're destroying all this other stuff because AI is coming, and AI is the ultimate social network because it's just you and one other being that's going to communicate with you. You don't really need all these other people. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that dopamine hit is a really hard trick to prevent folks from attaching themselves to.
Yeah, I totally agree. At this point, I'm pretty convinced the only way out of it is regulation. Mm-hmm. It's just, they're so good at manipulating us. Maybe some public awareness campaigns too, if we can get the right people supporting it, similar to anti-smoking campaigns, to make people aware of just how our brains and attention are being hijacked. It's, I don't know, anybody who wouldn't want to lock their phone away for a week and just take a break from it. But we're also tied to it because so many people work from their devices. It's the reality of modern life. And some people have the luxury of being able to put the phone away, but a lot of people don't.
So do you think Superset can be successful at reducing some of our dependence? And can you make money doing that?
I'm going to continue to advocate for good laws that are in the public interest, that aren't dramatically hurtful to businesses, particularly small businesses, like small tech companies. The lobbying group I'm with, the App Association, they're great. They represent the interests of small tech companies. And what's happening right now, and the way that a lot of this data protection is shaping up, is through the exercising of data rights. In Europe, California, and 19 other states, you've got the right to be forgotten. So they'll delete all your data. You've got the right to opt out of the sale of your information, right to opt out of automated decision-making, correct any misinformation, and a few other miscellaneous ones. And some of the companies that we're working with are getting nearly 900,000 data deletion requests a year, often delivered just via email. And so it's overwhelming to companies that want to be doing the right thing. So the idea that the government paves the way for the actual exit path for people and the right for them to be able to pull their data out of the hands of these big companies, but then you still need a technical mechanism to be able to do so. And that's where we're sort of filling a gap.
Okay. All right. So I think I hope it all works out for all of us, because then your mom's gonna have a nice house, and then we'll all be safer. We won't be dating AI into our 80s.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is it's simultaneously a happy thing and also a downer. So this has been wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out for a minute. So Zane, where can people find out more about what you're working on?
Yep. Our website is trustsuperset.com. Mm-hmm. If you've got to deal with data privacy laws, in particular, some of these laws coming out of California and the Delete Act, and laws regulating data brokers in particular. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn, Zane Witherspoon. All my socials are at Zane with Spoon.
All right, very cool. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been fun.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
This has been Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.